Over the last few years, I've seen an outstanding amount of people asking why Capcom decided to remake Resident Evil 2, and continue their remake train from there instead of starting with the first game. I mean, I see this question about every other week on the Resident Evil subreddit, and every time I see this, the response is always, they didn't. Sometimes, the asker is so disconnected with the classic Resident Evil games that they don't even realize that this was a remake, believing it to instead be a simple remaster. But oftentimes, the actual question being asked is, why didn't they modernize Resident Evil 1 before Resident Evil 2? Well, to understand why, you have to understand the history of the RE2 remake, and why it exists in the first place, which many people don't. The Resident Evil series has attracted a large number of newer fans ever since 7. Capcom developed it in their sparkly new Reach for the Moon engine, and it was even a soft reboot, so it was the perfect place for new fans to hop on if they didn't want to have to play through over 20 years of games. However, because so many people are new to Resident Evil, it's only natural that they wouldn't be familiar with RE2 Remake's lengthy development history, which had technically been planned all along as far back as 2002 as a follow-up to the heavily beloved Resident Evil 1 remake. And up until its official announcement in 2015, Resident Evil fans had been hounding Capcom to remake it just the same as they had remade Resident Evil 1. And eventually, in 2015, they finally announced that they were actually doing it. Perhaps you just had to be there, but it was such a big moment for Resident Evil fans. Even newer fans of the series have probably heard the words "we do it" here and there. It was kind of the Resident Evil 2 remake slogan in a way. It was the message that our wait was finally over, that the game we had been begging for 13 years was finally officially happening. That's why everyone was going so crazy about RE2 Remake when it came out in 2019. By that point, the idea of a remake of RE2 was kind of a legend to the fan base. It was the game that we had been deeply anticipating for nearly 20 years by the time it released. And therein lies the answer to the question. Why did they skip out on remaking RE1? They didn't. It got its remake, and the only reason Resident Evil 2 got remade in the first place was because fans of this 2002 classic had been begging for it for well over a decade. And with that said, ask yourself this: what if, instead of remaking the game fans had been asking for well over a decade, Capcom decided to just remake RE1 again? How do you think people would have reacted to that? Because I can't really imagine people would have been too happy. So, there you go. There's your answer. However, as we've covered, Capcom is willing to remake a game if there is enough outcry for it, so who knows? Perhaps they will remake RE1 again. I mean, the path has definitely been cleared for another RE1 remake, and by all means, if you want it, go ahead and make that clear online, for sure. But I don't think I remember seeing a single person asking Capcom to remake RE1 again until RE2 got remade. So to be clear, it was never going to happen before RE2. Nor should it have.